Welcome to IT Reality. I'm your host, H-Town Vinny.
And I'm Richard Kenyon.
And I'm Nathan Bennett.
With over 4 decades of combined IT operational experience.
We may have an opinion.
Or not.
And now on with the show.
Let's go!
You know, more often than not, we seem to have opinions on things, guys. I don't know why that might be, but we're back at home. It's post VMware Explore 2023 US. I guess I should clarify that because there are other versions of it. We are back home, and our brains didn't really get much of a break. We focused on a lot of stuff in Vegas, and it seems like the stream of information is not stopping. What do y'all think? How y'all doing?
My brain is squishy. Squishy brain.
That sounds like a personal problem, sir.
No, it's a mental problem.
Well, we all know how I'm doing. And you know why, Vince?
Because
it's a beautiful day in Texas, everyone. And the temperature is actually under 100 degrees for 4 days in a row. Cue the music. Cue the pumpkin spice lattes everywhere. And holy cow, it's fall, or as we call it in Texas, second summer. And
you think he's joking? I can see his eggs grilling right now on his desk. It's quite amazing.
It leave something outside and it'll cook in Texas. Mm-hmm. That's for sure. I know when I left Houston, coming back from Explore, my truck registered 109 or 111 on the dash. So that was just air temp, but whatever.
I flew back into a nice cool rainstorm. It's a lovely, lovely fall beginning in Buffalo. It's cool, crisp 65. The rain comes out. It's the rainbow. It's lovely. It's like paradise here.
Nathan, remember this conversation in about 3.5 months or so? And let's check and see if his opinion is still what it is.
Oh, it'll be the same. It'll just be very grumpy.
He sent me a picture of a snowstorm, I think it was, that hit you, Richard. You're like, no, yeah, the generator's running. I kind of have power, maybe. And then things were freezing and it was just terrible.
Yeah,
but,
the air was so cold and moving so fast with the wind that the air filter in my generator was getting clogged up because it couldn't evaporate itself quick enough because it was so wet before the wind whipping around the corner. We had a hurricane just replace it with a blizzard.
Well, weather is certainly something that we could probably talk about for days. I sometimes wish that technology behaved more like the weather. In some cases it does, in some cases
unpredictable and chaotic.
Well, those are two words you could use. That's not the ones I was going to use. But I was thinking more like the winds of change. Being IT professionals that are connected the way we are in the quantity and quality, whatever words you want to use, we hear about a lot of, quote, new trends in the industry, and business is doing this now instead of that, or and you could slice it off any way you want, whether it comes to networking, whether it comes to storage, or actual software running on any layer of the platform, so to speak, even all the way into the application stack. It just seems like we're always talking about coming change, this and that. Nathan, I if I recall correctly, you've spent quite a lot of time working with businesses and application this and that and whatever in your role at Sterling. Maybe we weren't supposed to say that, but whatever. I know you have experience, sir.
This podcast is not sponsored by any one company, nor does it reflect the views of the people who work there.
What are your thoughts, Nathan?
Yeah, so I mean, full transparency, we had the opportunity to get a little bit of a view within VMware Application Catalog, and it cued a number of different thoughts in my head. One, which is kind of in that winds of change, I started in automation, and everyone just thinks, oh, okay, you wrote PowerShell scripts, and that was a part of it. I wrote PowerShell scripts, I wrote Python scripts, I wrote whatever scripts I could use in order to do what I needed to do. It's called DevOps. I have a very broad definition of DevOps, which is basically anything and everything that enables the ability to get an application into production faster is DevOps. And
he says while he's wearing the "Don't Hate the Kate" shirt.
I love Kubernetes. I love Kates. So I'm sorry. And this is an extremely nice t-shirt. but what I kind of want to talk about with around this is kind of like the life cycle. I think one of the biggest things that we need to do as human beings is learn how to tell stories. And in my life, what DevOps was, or the idea of managing and migrating applications into production, was very heinous. It all started with like your template, your image, your quote unquote image. And for a lot of people, it's Windows, Ubuntu, or whatever. But for me, it was definitely Windows. I gotta say one thing, and that is, Microsoft is a professional at destroying templates. It'll be perfect. It'll be a golden template. It'll be the best thing you ever have. It'll be like, this thing is the most solid template I'll ever have, and then it'll crash. And then you just try to figure out what happened, how to break it, how to fix it. And eventually what happens after that is you just rebuild your image, because it's Windows, it sucks, and it probably would take less time just to rebuild the darn thing than to actually fix it. Well, then you get into tool sets that actually help you do that. Things like Packer and other solutions that help you kind of build that image. And so that's kind of like one iteration of how that one area kind of builds and grows. Within DevOps, there's kind of like three main phases, like your code base, your build phase, and then your deploy phase, right? That's kind of, in a barbaric way of viewing it. So your build phase for me was always kind of like on a virtual machine in that template, right? Getting the application on it, that was kind of in the deploy phase as a build and deploy, taking the application base, putting it into that virtual machine, and then deploying it out. And then we got into pretty crazy things, right? We got into like canary testing and things like that. For canary, for those that don't know what canary testing is, it's like the old coal miners. If you had a little canary, you went down into the depths, that canary also only lost consciousness, you got the heck out. And for all those that are like, oh no, the poor canary, they had these little like oxygen things that to like give to the canary to bring it back. Obviously, you don't want to just like go through a ton of canaries. But that's where canary testing came from, right? It's the idea of, is this actually running? Is this going to be fine? The next piece was just like, after it's deployed, is it good? So that canary testing became a bit bigger than blue-green testing and app rollout testing, and all the different types of deployments that could be done in order to validate what's good. And then after it's past the testing phase, then it's like in the production phase. This is out there, it's good, and we're happy with it. It's in production. Netflix is, you're able to stream whatever horrible drama that's not really a drama. It's some real life, quote unquote, drama that's not real life, but whatever. Everyone's hot on it, so people watch it apparently. Anyway, that's kind of like the idea of a pipe. And I apologize to all my DevOps and platform engineers. It's very barbaric the way that I described it, but that idea of source to production is carried throughout all the different tool sets and solutions that we've discussed. And that leads us into this idea of a catalog or application catalog that we were able to see. I kind of rambled on for a lot. I know. That was a lot. I know. I feel like I should stop.
I was listening, and I'm like, well, this is good. This is good information for people who don't understand that pipeline, kind of like me. Even though I have worked with many developers for actually many, many years, I have always been on the other side of that coin, where the thing that you just explained, that entire CI/CD pipeline, which I actually know what that means, content ingestion and content delivery, is running on something. And whether that's containers, they still need to live somewhere, whether it's in the cloud or whether it's on premises, and then all of the other technologies that are underneath that. And what we have been presented with is VMware's new app catalog. And as an infrastructure person, I am looking at this going, another DevOps tool. I don't know how to get it in my environment, but it looks nice. Oh, I wonder if it has anything to do with Bitnami. Scrolls down the slide deck. Oh, look, it's actually built on Bitnami. I know what Bitnami is. It's an app catalog service thing where, people go and they grab things, and Nathan can correct me if I'm wrong. But the bridge that I am missing as an engineer, as an infrastructure person, as a non-developer who has worked with developers is you keep having these VMware products that come out, Tanzu and Kubernetes, and even NSX to a small degree, that bridges the gap that allows you to get all this onto your infrastructure. And then, Bitnami. And then now we have an app catalog, which is actually looks pretty cool from a build perspective. It's an entire catalog where you can do secure build of materials from a software standpoint. It has NIST certifications in it, which is amazing from a security standpoint and validation. But it's a developer product being sold to an infrastructure stack. And I'm missing the bridge that connects these two. And it seems to be a running theme lately that I have even noticed at VMware Explore, where I would love to give this to the developers, but the developers don't care what it runs on. So how do I build something and get them to use it? Or they sell me something and want me to use it on my infrastructure. Where's the middle ground? And I'm hoping Nathan can elaborate a little bit on it, because that's where I'm getting frustrated, because I want to help developers. I want to help my company succeed. And it just seems like these products are being marketed to two different people on the same platform.
Yeah, so there's a difference between an SRE and a platform developer, and the difference is very minute. I tend to think of it in terms of an SRE as is the person that's in charge of getting the application onto the platform. Platform developer has the platform, right? Manages, builds, and maintains the platform. An SRE may have a little bit more than that, may have a little bit less than that. It all depends on the organization, right? So it's if someone comes to me and says there's no real definition about the two, I'd kind of nod and say, yeah, it's kind of like DevOps. Anybody that says, hey, this is what it is, eventually wait a year, it'll be different. Which is why I define DevOps in that way. I also define DevOps in that way because there was a great DevOps talk out there where he defined it that way, and you know what, I think that fits the best. But let's dive into a couple of different things. The first thing around kind of like I believe you talked about Bitnami, right? So Bitnami is open source right now, so you can use Bitnami package managers for different things. This is a enterprise version of Bitnami, right? So for those people that are out there that want a supported version of something like that, this is what fits for their needs. And that's kind of the goal, I guess, when we talk about, I function as a VAR. I think everybody understands that. So I can't really sell anything open source. I mean, I could do like services for it, but a lot of customers and enterprises out there want to have something that's supported, want to be able to say, hey, I'm having this issue. Who do I go to? Right. I made the comment previously and it ended up getting posted onto an article. You don't want to just copy and paste from Stack Overflow and say this is good and put it out there. There are things that need to be secured and there are things that need to be supported. And so this is kind of that jump from open source into a supported catalog. Now, the open source community is probably going to come down on me and say, how dare you, whatever. I love open source, but when it gets to the enterprise world, open source is not normally the main thing that they build unless they are able to support it themselves, right? And what I mean by that is like they have to have deep technical acumen for the specific open source products that you're looking for. I'm talking like OpenStack. I'm talking about, like Terraform, all those individual pieces that are open source, but yet can be utilized. And I know I said Terraform and again, the OSS community is like OpenTF, which, absolutely OpenTF. I'm for kind of like both sides of the puzzle because I really want to see if maybe there's a split here, then two great things come out of it.
We're going to get a bunch of heckling from this episode, but that's okay.
We like the heckling. It spurs conversation, which is what we always want.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, go ahead, Vince.
I want to jump in because you mentioned something that, at least in my world, comes up regularly, and it's not to be just skipped, highlighted over. Um, Support. One of the things that I have to deal with on a regular basis, doesn't matter what layer of the stack I'm working in, I still have to keep in mind supportability of what I'm working with. There could be 10 ways that I could accomplish something, whether it be through an application stack, through Bitnami or something like it, or buying a product off the shelf. I have to keep in mind the fact that I'm not going to be working at insert company forever. Someone else is going to have to support it, whether it's a team member or a support organization. I'm not going to be there forever. The business is not going to be, have the staff that it does forever. So we need to make sure that whatever we deploy can be supported by someone other than the person who put it in. And that the fact that Bitnami and other technologies like it are bringing together all of these components that previously were kind of, I guess, off limits to businesses, not because they were banned in any way, just because lots of reasons. Those are coming into the fold. They're becoming options through stuff like this.
And supportability is what, let me jump in. The supportability is also interesting from that standpoint too, is not only from what you said, but you also have to keep in mind the size of the company and what the company's doing, regardless of if it's developer or non-developer based, whether does your company create software or not. One of those two things is true. If your company is a small business and you're relying on open source tooling, eventually that'll work perfectly fine for you and you can just go on doing that. But as your company gets bigger and more robust and starts actually maybe ending up on the stock market, or it ends up with 18,000 employees and it is a Fortune 50 company, you have to keep in mind that there are many different stacks here that really need to rely on support. You've got VARs, you've got partners, you've got maybe many NDAs for companies that you're partnering with. And all of those things just can't be, sure, whatever, we just built our little solution and there it is. No, they have to be supported. They have to be under agreements. They have to go through legal things. There's so many sides to this discussion around supportability in the enterprise that it probably leads into what Nathan is saying, but I would have been remiss without mentioning all of that.
Well, I think these are all great points because at the end of the day, you cannot overcome a culture with a product. Culture will always win. If your culture is open source, you will stay open source. If your culture is supported solutions, you will stay supported solutions. It is very difficult to change that culture. And one thing I do want to go back to with the application catalog is the mention of, how do we get it deployed into our environment? You don't. It actually is deployed in the VMware cloud and then is connected to your environment via.
Oh, that's a nice bridge.
Yep.
That's a very nice bridge.
And then the other piece to it is that in terms of licensing, everyone kind of likes to bring up licensing. It's actually licensed by the number of applications that you're deploying. So if you have like 50 to 50 licenses, I mean, to use air quotes of licenses, you have like 50 applications that you can deploy with it, right? That's actually pretty cool in terms of what you're actually building and how you're architecting that. Now, I'm not a license guy. And so there's probably a lot of pieces to that you can dive into, but the overarching idea is that you have something in the cloud where you can build your applications. From that thing in the cloud, you're actually able to specify the runtimes, what app components, what supporting apps do you want to use with it, things like Jenkins, Git, Harbor, etc. And then create those connections into application catalog. And then from that upstream open source solution, select what components you want to deploy. And then it runs a build pipeline to then validate and verify based off of individual platforms, and then builds the image and then deploys the image to the environment that you wanted to deploy. So all of those pieces that I described in DevOps as, the testing part, the image part, the upstream code part, the individual deployments to production and however it's deployed into production part, all of those pieces are built into application catalog as a singular platform to basically deploy your applications, right? Now, there are different pieces to that, right? The first thing that people are going to think about is, oh my gosh, well, I can only deploy applications that are built the way that they say it has to be built. Well, we'll hit that on the head real quick and say that's not true. You can create custom images and use that custom image to deploy the way that you want it to be deployed. And so you can build custom applications and deploy them the way that you need to be deployed, which is really cool. What next? I mean, so Bitnami was notoriously only for containers, right? For a while. Application Catalog is not for containers. It's for containers and virtual machines. If you have, remember when I talked about how Windows like to destroy my virtual machines and by doing updates?
We all got a moment of PTSD when you did.
It made me cry one day. I was just it was just in that moment, right? When I was like, oh gosh. Having the ability to rebuild that image, right? Validate it, test it, make sure that it's good before you actually deploy it into production. That's really powerful, right? And let's, for a second, we kind of dogged on open source for a second. Let's take a step back and remember the good things for open source, like, for instance, database management and free databases, right? The ability to do some CVEs within open source tooling, the ability to validate what you have and maybe tweak the application here and there. These are all like open source solutions that you would put into the pipeline, not necessarily be supported by the open source solutions or areas, but you have that kind of support from Application Catalog to make sure that how those are being utilized can be log validated, and then through what you're actually building, that find what individual component is the problem and then fix it, right? That's probably one of the biggest problems that you run into when you're building these pipelines. It's like, okay, what in the process broke? If you built that process, you will know it. You will know exactly where it broke. You will know it every single time because you built that. If you did not build it and you inherited it, let's hope the person that built it was really good at logs, right?
And documentation.
And documentation, yeah, to a certain degree. So I know we're rehashing these individual pieces, but in my world, having the ability to create a secure SBOM or software bill of materials, like you mentioned, Richard, is pretty key when you're talking about application deployment. The ability to scan your image and validate, is there any open ports that shouldn't be open? Is there any known CVEs that they need to make sure to catch and then catch it? Is there a Trojan on this that somehow somebody put on there, or a rootkit or something? Validate that this thing is good before you put it into production. That's one of the kind of small pieces that nobody really talks about that this thing does. And the other piece, and I know I'm rambling again, is the supply chain. So no one ever really knew or talked about supply chain. Then COVID came along and everyone's like, the supply chain is broken. And everyone was kind of like,
or ships getting stuck in canals.
Exactly. Right. I mean, everyone kind of freaked out. They're like, what's the supply chain? And why does the ship in the Suez Canal mean so much? And what is happening? And it's that
how is my software on a ship?
Yeah. It's that kind of strange understanding that everything comes from somewhere. Right. And you have to validate where you're bringing that in, and validate that it's secure, validate that it's good. We're not talking about just that the application runs, but the application runs in the best way for the organization in all the facets that the organization needs it to be. Is it resilient? Is it durable? Does it not have anything that could be enabled and violated by some hacker, right? Those are all the individual pieces that we have to do in that idea of the secure supply chain. But just like when you buy a TV and then it for some reason spends a little bit too much time in a foreign country, and next thing you know, there's a news article that says, hey, your TV can understand everything that you say, and you're just like, well, how? And they're like, there's a chip literally soldered on your motherboard on your TV that's actually kind of listening to things, and you're just like, okay, well, this is crazy. By the way, that actually happened, for those that didn't know. Like that.
Yeah, that's like a thing.
I don't recall hearing about it.
Yeah.
Well, that's because your TV doesn't speak, it only listens.
Yep. And congratulations, UFOs exist as well during COVID. That's, a hilarious situation. But I know
run on software too.
They do run software. Only the best software. But I know I've been rambling on. I mean, like Vince, Richard, what do you guys think about all this stuff?
Well, your security thing really kind of made me go back and look at the VMware Application Catalog little chart here. I know you guys can't see it, but one of the things that was interesting to me that I kind of never really thought about was the lowest possible level of support is the base image that this entire thing runs on. And in this case, it could be Photon, or it could be one of your other Debian or Ubuntu, or patches and things like that. It's your choice of OS. But the cool thing about this VMware Application Catalog is if you use this product, all of the CVEs that come out for those base images are patched on the VMware side, which means that they're also scanned, which means that they're also supported, which means that it's one less thing for you as the developer or the SRE to worry about on the community side of things, because the entire application catalog that runs on the image is taken care of by VMware. That's actually pretty slick. And I've heard developers talk about worrying about how they patch their base level OSs and things like that. And it never really kind of hit a light bulb in my brain that went, oh, that's actually a thing as part of the entire application stack. You have to worry about the OS itself that runs way down at the bottom. So neat little plug. And it, made me think of it when you mentioned it.
This is all pie in the sky stuff for me. I spend so much of my time either somewhere in the infrastructure stack, or that, or trying to figure out how to help people protect the stack. Once someone deploys it, it's then providing business value, and then it gets yanked away, either because of ransomware attack or some other failure, including human error deleting stuff they shouldn't be deleting. That stuff happens, and anytime I look at new releases like this application catalog idea, I can't help but look at this stuff from how can it go wrong? How can it get broken? What support requests are we going to get for this kind of thing? I firmly believe that it has great potential, and that if Nathan was given all the resources and said, "Here, go build this cool thing," I trust that Nathan could make something really cool. I just help but look at it. How is it going to die? How is it going to break? How am I going to have to be woken up at 11 o'clock at night because of someone pushing the wrong button? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but that's what I see when I look at this stuff.
So
spoken like a true ops person.
Yeah.
What do I do now?
So let's go back 5 years and rediscover how testing works. No, I mean that in the nicest way. So that's where the testing comes from, right? Nothing goes into production other than what you say goes into production. So that's point one that I would say to that. Point two is when you're building these solutions, each new solution that's verified and tested has a version ID to it, or a tag to it, because everything is tagged these days. And so you have the ability to deploy what is new or what is previous, right? If what is new is broken, you do a rollback to what is previous. Let's say you have version 1 and version 2. I've got version 2, everything looks good, so I deploy it, and there's something that it didn't catch, right? These things happen. And so when I see it and I'm like, okay, I can't run version 2. I need to roll back to version 1. You roll back to version 1. If version 1 is then redeployed, and then you have the ability to then utilize version 1 again. This is actually one of the reasons why I love Kubernetes, is because it has a built-in feature in order to do this. So that when you do a rollout, you actually say what version to change it to, and you do a record on it. You can actually do a rollback that will automatically roll back to the version previous of that pod, or the image for that pod or deployment, and then keep that where it needs to be, so that you can actually have that versatility to say, okay, build it this way, roll back, and then click a button, it goes back. So that's the second thing I would say. The third thing I would say is that it's cloud-based, right? And so the idea, I mean, I lived the VRA 7.x life, right? I had 12 individual virtual machines that run, like 3 of them were the actual appliances, and the rest of them were Windows-based machines. And a service broke on one of those things, the whole thing just died. And so that I've lived that life on-prem. This being a cloud solution, obviously you don't really have that. I'm assumed there will be an on-prem solution eventually, but I can only imagine what it would be like in order to maintain and support that, considering the the insane amount of integrations that I can see this having and validating in order to support so many things in the open source community.
Yeah, one of the key features of the VMware Application Catalog that I'm looking at is it's verified for AirGap deployments, which seems counterintuitive, as you had just mentioned, that it's a cloud-based product. So I'm curious to how they're going to pull that off.
I didn't see
People
that.
smart.
So yeah,
Yeah,
maybe there's something.
It's on one of the slides. It's a bulleted point. It says verified for AirGap deployments. And I'm wondering if you pull everything down from the cloud into your AirGap solution, and then because everything has been validated on the VMware side of things in the cloud, that's how they get that certification. But it's a key selling point. If you guys are out there and you're looking to expand something and you're like, hey, I really need this for AirGap, but there's no on-premises solution, call VMware and ask them about their VMware Application Catalog. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, that's interesting. I see what you're talking about here.
Yeah, and they got FIPS compliant artifacts. It seems that of this deck that we are looking at and the knowledge that we have been able to gain from the blog post and the product and the briefing that we had, security is a huge factor around this product. They're not only pushing the Bitnami application catalog into a supported application on the VMware side that you can call VMware for support. There's like security on every line. It's like FIPS compatible, FIPS artifacts, AirGap solutions, CVEs. They really did their research on what seems to be the headaches for people rolling their own solution, and looks good.
Yeah, so maybe there is like a way of getting it localized, and that's actually a good thing for people that like I work at, because I work with a lot of air-gapped environments that do need these type of solutions, because at the end of the day, they want to make sure that their applications are up and running no matter what. So here's when I saw application catalog, this is what I saw. And I'll question this to you guys. Think of a cloud, any cloud. Pick a cloud, any cloud. AWS, Azure, or GCP. What do you think is the number one service?
Databases.
Wait, number one cloud or number one service within that cloud?
Number one service within the cloud. It's pretty much universal across the three.
Relational database of some kind.
So it's actually storage, just because that's where they're the cheapest, and that's where they want to keep their things. Database, I believe, is number 2. Number 3 is something as simple as a virtual machine. Anybody know what number 4 is?
Don't ask me.
Take a guess.
Okay.
Random guess. Authentication.
The only cloud guy. You guys, I keep telling you to read my blog. You got great cloud information on there.
Well, maybe if you linked it to us and told us where to find it, we would love to do that.
No, I don't want anybody else to read it. I did it just for you guys. No, the fourth one, and I could be completely off with it, but I read this was dated information. The fourth one was application deployment solutions. So things like Google App Engine, Elastic Beanstalk, and AWS. I think it's Azure Apps. These are solutions.
I know some of those words.
Probably the apps, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I can spell apps.
The idea behind it is basically building your application and setting the way that it's supposed to be deployed into the infrastructure, right? App Engine is probably the coolest. It's my favorite between the three, just because you can do a percentage-wise scroll when you do rollouts. You can do Canary. You can do different ones in order to do your rollouts. It has the most extensible listed features, but I very much see Application Catalog, VMware Application Catalog, as VMware's response to these things, because it's a way to basically get your application ready and then get it into the environments that it needs to be deployed into.
So I wish many people a lot of luck using this particular item. I hope they build cool things with it, and I hope they come back and actually tell us about these things, because I don't know enough here. I need to learn some of this myself. I can only listen to you two ramble on about stuff for so long, but
it's cool. It from the outset of what we were presented, it looks to be a solution I have been looking for, that it's kind of a whole product in of itself, And I'm hoping it's going to be a stepping stone to bridging that gap between the SREs and the developers who utilize all of this stuff, and then the guys who need to install it into their environment, which would be people like myself and the team that I work on, where it's a really big gap at the moment. And I'm lucky enough to have Nathan as a co-host and a friend that can help me through it, because it's like, I need to install Tanzu Basic. I have no idea how. I know what it is, but I don't know how to do it because it's a development DevOps SRE application. But I'm on the infrastructure side. But I want to help the developers, because helping developers is cool because they build cool stuff that I can't deploy. It's a very odd circle we're in right now.
Just click the clickety clicks. And you'll clickety click.
Yeah,
it's
the clickety
good to
clicks.
have friends.
Yep.
It's good to have friends. Well, we made a few friends while we were at VMware Explore, and we learned a little bit about this application catalog, and we're learning more as we go. I expect there's going to be more information to follow, but we wanted to talk about it a little bit while we had the chance. So, VMware Application Catalog. Look for the blog posts on it. I'm sure there's probably many before this gets out, but if anybody listening to this has questions, comments, concerns, you want to tell us we're wrong, or what little bit we got right, by all means, let us know. Give us a tweet response or a LinkedIn comment, or hey, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That'd be nice, don't you think?
Or come on to the show, Vince, and you can actually teach us how it all works or how you utilize it in your environment, so that I can speak to someone that actually knows a little bit more about DevOps and not these numbskulls over here talking about ops stuff.
Yeah, Nathan is twitching over there because he has no programmers to talk to. So please come join us.
Help us out, folks. But until next time, see you later.
This has been another great episode of IT Reality.
We are everywhere, so pick your podcast app. You can also find us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter.